Hello, I've just returned from the World Neolithic Congress in Şanliurfa, Turkey, which took place from the 4th to 8th of November, 2024. And in this video, I'd like to give a kind of a general overview of that conference and its excursions. But because the excursions were really so amazing, we got to visit Göbekli Tepe, Sefer Tepe, Karahan Tepe, Çakmaktepe, and Sayburç. And I think those were sufficiently exciting that they deserve their own videos. So I'm going to try to get some of those videos out over the next few weeks. But in this one, I'll keep it fairly short and just give a general overview of the conference. Conference registrants stayed at hotels in Şanliurfa, but every morning we were bused out to Karahan University, about 20 kilometers east of Şanliurfa. Reportedly, there were about 850 registrants for this first World Neolithic Congress, an excellent showing considering that it focuses on a particular phase of prehistory, albeit on a global scale. There was a bit of press as people lined up to collect their convention badges on Monday morning. Then, after some opening speeches, there was the first of several plenary lectures. The opening one was a keynote by Peter Bellwood, Professor Emeritus at Australian National University in Canberra. He gave a wide-ranging lecture on the impact of food production on global human population history over the past 12,000 years. Professor Bellwood is well known for his books on such topics as the origins of agricultural societies and the prehistory of Southeast Asia and Oceania. The Tuesday morning plenary was by Xiao Chun Hong, also of Australian National University and an expert on the prehistory of East Asia and Western Micronesia. She spoke on the emergence of Neolithic life in East and Southeast Asia. On Thursday morning, the plenary session was a series of commemorative lectures. The first had Mehmet Ojdojan speaking on the contributions of Bruce Howe, Halit Chambal, and Robert and Linda Braidwood to early Neolithic research in Southeast Anatolia and the northern part of the Fertile Crescent more generally. Barbara Hellwing, director of the Vorasiatischen Museum of the State Museum in Berlin, followed with a remembrance of the late Harold Hauptmann, well known for directing the pioneering excavations at the Neolithic site of Navali Chori in southeast Anatolia, as well as beginning, along with Klaus Schmidt, the excavation at Göbekli Tepe. And zooarchaeologist Joris Peters presented a remembrance of Klaus Schmidt, who directed the excavations at Göbekli Tepe from Hauptmann's retirement until his untimely death in 2014. The final plenary lecture, on Friday morning, was by Melinda Zader of the Smithsonian Institution and an expert on the domestication of animals. Her title was Unpacking the Neolithic, and she emphasized that the various aspects of the Neolithic, such as sedentism, management of resources, domestication of plants and animals, and village life, did not occur in lockstep or part of a Neolithic package, but rather took place as a series of processes over several millennia. There were 45 regular sessions of papers, many of them with multiple sittings, and more than 650 presenters. While a lot of these were on topics related to the Neolithic of the Near East, there were also sessions on Neolithic Europe, the Mediterranean, Africa, and East and South Asia, as well as sessions on early agricultural societies in North and South America, where the term Neolithic is not typically applied. They also ranged widely in their focus, with some on topics such as animal domestication or the spread of Neolithic economies, and others on particular classes of artifact or mortuary practices, or waterlogged sites, or ancient DNA, or isotopic evidence for migrations. As you'd expect, there were quite a few papers that focused on the Taş Tepeler sites, such as Göbekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe, and Sefer Tepe. There was similarly broad representation in the poster room. There were posters on the ancient environment of Göbekli Tepe, the spatial organization at Sayburç and Aktopraklik Hoyuk, PP&B architecture at Sefer Tepe, groundstone tools in domestic areas at Karahan Tepe, plant exploitation in sedentary sites of the late Pleistocene, new finds of late Neolithic sites in Lebanon, megalithic tombs in Spain, 3D documentation of PPNA lithics from Cyprus, genomic evidence for social inequality and the Neolithic transition in Italy, bone tools from Hüseyr-Höyük, basket weaving in Jomon sites of northern Japan, and many other topics over a global range. There were also several large social events during the Congress. I missed the welcome reception on Sunday evening, but did attend the reception at the Şanliurfa Archaeological Museum on Monday night. The large crowd listened to traditional Kurdish music and then a speech by the local governor. Then, many of the attendees took the opportunity to tour the Neolithic section of the museum, including being able to walk through the life-size replica of one of Göbekli Tepe's monumental buildings. I'll talk more about the museum exhibits in a separate video. There was another reception at the Doubletree Hotel on Thursday night with a speech by the Turkish Minister of Culture. And of course, participants spent most evenings exploring Şanliurfa's culinary options, especially at restaurants and cafes in the Old City. But the excursions were the real highlight of the World Neolithic Congress. As already noted, we were able to see a lot of the more impressive artifacts from the Taş Tepeler sites at the museum on Monday night. Wednesday morning, we were distributed among a number of buses for excursions to see several of the sites themselves. My particular group went first to Sayburç, west of Şanliurfa. I think most of us were already familiar with the relief on a stone bench belonging to a monumental building, which shows a man grasping his penis and flanked by two rearing leopards. In pictures I'd seen of this building, it was mostly covered by a modern house, but now the house was gone and archaeologists had exposed the entirety of the Neolithic building, as well as Neolithic surfaces around it. But we were even more surprised to learn that there was a huge area of new excavations in the southern part of the village, which have exposed fantastically well-preserved Neolithic domestic architecture, many of the buildings with T-pillars and walls still standing more than 2 meters high. Our next stop was Çakmaktepe, west of Sayburç. This windswept site is quite shallow and consequently not as well preserved, but still shows many of the now familiar round buildings. One of the more remarkable aspects of this site was the high density of lithics on the ground in the vicinity of the excavations. Next, we drove east again and turned off the main highway to head northeast toward Göbekli Tepe. This site needs little commentary. Suffice to say that the buildings in the excavation area under the new roof are unimaginably impressive. I also have to say that they appear to have done a pretty good job at making the protective roof and the tourist walkways as unintrusive as possible. Obviously, the posts that hold up the roof had to be founded on bedrock, and that's why there was targeted deep archaeological soundings wherever that was needed. The walkways are wooden platforms suspended above the site surface and thus minimizing damage to the site. Our next stop was some 50 kilometers east of Göbekli Tepe at Sefer Tepe. This is a low mound with a farmer's house on its south slope, and recent excavations there have exposed many pre-pottery Neolithic B buildings, most of them apparently houses very similar in form to the later rectangular buildings at Göbekli Tepe. Quite a few of them have T-shaped pillars without any relief decoration. And finally, we came to Karahan Tepe. As the sun was rapidly sinking, many of us were worried that we'd lose the light before we had a chance to view the site, and I hurried up the path to the site on the hill above the rest house. This site was the real highlight for me. I first skirted the unusual rock-cut installation with its penis-shaped pillars, all carved out of the bedrock. Nobody's quite sure what this is, but I suspect it's a very large and symbolically charged water cistern. There's a serpentine channel leading into it, apparently to direct rainwater, and I have to say that it's a lot bigger than I thought it was from pictures I'd seen. There are several large round pillared structures at the site, as well as lots of smaller ones, both round and subrectangular, and apparently most of them have clear evidence of domestic habitation. My favorite is this large building with 2 large ovens, fire installations on the floor, and stacks of chlorite vessels and platters like some giant kitchen. More on this in a later video. It was a great climax to an exciting day, and we got it in just in time before the sun set.